Dr. Alina Rodriguez couldn't believe what she was seeing on her computer screen. After working for 15 years studying alien life forms across the galaxy, she thought she had seen everything. But this morning, something completely different showed up in her data. She was sitting in her small office aboard the Deep Space Research Station. It's a massive floating laboratory that orbited a distant star. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago, but she didn't notice. Her eyes were glued to the readings that had just come back from their latest space probe mission. The probe had been sent to explore the far edges of what they called the Andromeda sector. It was supposed to be a routine mission, just mapping new star systems and looking for basic signs of life. Nobody expected to find anything unusual. Space exploration had become almost boring after so many years of discovering the same types of planets and creatures. But this time was different. Alina rubbed her tired eyes and looked at the screen again. The numbers didn't change. According to the data, they had found a species that broke every rule they knew about how life worked in the universe. These beings seemed to have abilities that made no sense at all. The first thing that caught her attention was how fast they could reproduce. The probe scanners showed that this species could increase their numbers incredibly quickly. In just a few decades, their population could grow from millions to billions. That kind of growth rate had never been recorded before in any intelligent species. Then, there was their technology. The probe had detected energy signatures that were completely off the charts. These beings had somehow developed weapons that could destroy entire planets. They had machines that could change the weather on their world. They had even figured out how to split the tiniest particles of matter and release enormous amounts of energy. But what really made Alina's hand shake was their behavior toward their own planet. The readings showed massive destruction of their natural environment. Forests were disappearing at an alarming rate. The air and water were filled with poisonous chemicals. Entire animal species were going extinct because of their actions. It was like watching a species slowly destroy the very world that kept them alive. Alina had studied hundreds of different alien species over her career. She had seen creatures that could survive in the vacuum of space, beings made of pure energy, and civilizations that lived for thousands of years. But she had never encountered anything that seemed so perfectly designed for destruction. The more she studied the data, the more frightened she became. This species didn't just threaten themselves, they posed a danger to every living thing in the galaxy. Their rapid growth meant they would soon need more resources than their planet could provide. Their advanced weapons meant they could take what they wanted by force. Their willingness to destroy their own environment showed they had no respect for life itself. Alina stood up from her desk and walked to the large window that looked out into space. Millions of stars twinkled in the darkness, each one representing entire solar systems filled with life. Somewhere out there, peaceful civilizations were going about their daily lives, completely unaware that the most dangerous species in the galaxy had just been discovered. She thought about her own home planet, Kepler Prime, where she had grown up. It was a beautiful world covered in purple oceans and silver forests. The people there had lived in harmony with their environment for over 10,000 years. They had developed amazing technology, but they had always been careful to protect their world and respect other forms of life. The same was true for most of the species in the Galactic Council. The crystal beings from Rigel had built their entire civilization around preserving and protecting natural beauty. The ocean dwellers from Proxima had developed ways to live completely without harming their underwater ecosystem. Even the warrior races from the outer systems had strict codes about protecting innocent life, but this new species seemed to have no such values. They appeared to be driven only by their own needs and desires, willing to destroy anything that got in their way. Alina had seen this pattern before in smaller, less intelligent creatures. Scientists called them invasive species, organisms that would spread rapidly through an ecosystem, consuming everything until nothing was left. The difference was that those invasive species had limited intelligence and primitive technology. This new species had highly advanced brains and incredibly powerful machines. If they ever figured out how to travel between stars, they could spread across the entire galaxy like a plague. Alina returned to her desk and began typing her report. Every word felt heavy with responsibility. She knew that once she sent this information to the Galactic Council, everything would change. The peaceful age of exploration and cooperation that had lasted for centuries might be coming to an end. She described every detail of the probe's findings: the impossible reproduction rates, the devastating weapons, the environmental destruction, the apparent lack of any moral restraints. With each paragraph, she painted a picture of a species that represented everything the galactic community had worked to prevent. As she finished writing, Lena realized she was essentially declaring war on a species she had never met. But what choice did she have? The evidence was clear. These beings were not just dangerous. They were an existential threat to every peaceful civilization in the galaxy. She attached all the probe data to her report and prepared to send it through the emergency channels to the Galactic Council headquarters. Once this message was transmitted, there would be no going back. The galaxy's leaders would have to decide how to handle the most frightening discovery in recorded history. Elena's finger hovered over the send button for a long moment. Somewhere in the back of her mind, a small voice wondered if she might be wrong. Maybe there was something the probe had missed. Maybe these beings weren't as dangerous as they appeared. But the data didn't lie. Numbers were numbers. Energy readings were energy readings. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. She pressed the button and sent humanity's death sentence across the stars. The emergency alert reached every corner of the galaxy within hours. Council member Zara was enjoying her morning meditation when the urgent message appeared on her communication device. The peaceful energy patterns around her crystalline body immediately shifted to deep orange, a color that meant serious concern among her people. She wasn't alone in her worry. Across 47 different star systems, leaders from every major civilization received the same terrifying news. An unknown species had been discovered, and according to the initial reports, they might be the most dangerous threat the galaxy had ever faced. The massive council chambers on New Geneva Station had never filled so quickly. Representatives who normally took weeks to arrange meetings were arriving within hours. The urgency in the air was so thick you could almost touch it. Zara floated into her designated area of the great amphitheater, her crystalline form reflecting the worried lights of dozens of other species around her. To her left sat Ambassador Crix, whose blue skin was flickering with the rapid color changes that showed extreme anxiety among his ocean-dwelling people. Across the circular chamber, she could see the towering metal forms of the silicon beings, their normally steady electromagnetic fields buzzing with unusual frequency. Prime Minister Yolanda, the elderly leader of the council, called the emergency session to order. Her voice translated instantly into 47 different languages and communication methods, carried a weight that made everyone pay attention. "Fellow being," she began, "we face a situation unlike any in our recorded history. Dr. Elena Rodriguez has discovered a species that challenges everything we know about intelligent life in our galaxy." The giant holographic display in the center of the chamber came to life, showing Elena's probe data in vivid detail. As the information appeared, gasps and expressions of shock rippled through the assembled delegates in ways that matched their various biological types. The Arcturian representative's tentacles writhed in distress as the population growth charts appeared. Her species had taken thousands of years to reach their current numbers, carefully managing their reproduction to match their planet's resources. But this new species had gone from primitive hunters to billions of individuals in just a few thousand years. "Look at these numbers," whispered Ambassador Torin, his insect-like features clicking nervously. "They multiply faster than the plague locusts of the Vega system." But plague locusts don't build weapons that can crack planets in half. The weapons data made everyone even more uncomfortable. The hologram showed energy signatures that surpassed anything in the galactic arsenal. These beings had somehow learned to harness the power of stars themselves, creating bombs that could wipe out entire cities in seconds. They had built flying machines that could travel faster than sound, and ships that could explore the vacuum of space. But what really scared the council members was how these beings treated their own world. The environmental data painted a picture that made even the most hardened military commanders feel sick to their stomachs. "They're destroying their own planet," said General Harkin, his scales turning the dark purple that meant deep anger among his reptilian people. The probe shows massive forests disappearing every single day. They're dumping poison into their water supplies. They're even changing the chemistry of their atmosphere. The Centauri delegate's soft, musical voice carried a note of disbelief. How can any intelligent species be so blind to their own survival needs? It's like watching someone burn down their own house while they're still living in it. Council archives were quickly searched for any similar patterns in galactic history.
Oh.
The results were not encouraging. Every previous case of rapid expansion, combined with environmental destruction, had ended in complete collapse. But those had all been primitive species with limited technology. This was different. This species had the tools to spread their destructive patterns across multiple worlds. We're not just looking at planetary collapse, explained Dr. Yolanda as she highlighted the probe's long-range projections. According to these calculations, once this species exhausts their homeworld's resources, they'll be forced to expand outward. With their reproduction rates and weapons technology, they could consume entire star systems. The chamber fell silent as the terrible implications sank in. For thousands of years, the galactic community had worked together to build a civilization. Based on cooperation and respect for life, they had ended wars, shared knowledge, created a peaceful society that spanned hundreds of worlds. Now they were facing something that could destroy all of that progress. A species that seemed designed by nature to consume, destroy, and expand without any regard for the consequences. Ambassador Chen, representing the peaceful agricultural worlds of the Outer Rim, spoke with a trembling voice. My people have spent generations learning to live in harmony with our environment. We've developed technology that enhances life rather than destroying it. The idea of beings who would willingly poison their own world is beyond our understanding. The military advisors were already running calculations. General Vera, whose people had fought in the last major galactic conflict 3 centuries ago, presented her analysis with grim efficiency. If these beings develop faster than light travel, we have perhaps 50 years before they become an unstoppable force. Their weapons technology is advancing exponentially. Their population growth means they'll soon have billions of potential. Soldiers, and their apparent disregard for life itself, makes them unpredictable in any conflict scenario. The debate that followed was unlike anything in Council history. Some members argued for immediate diplomatic contact, hoping to somehow reason with these beings and teach them better ways. Others insisted that such dangerous creatures could never be trusted or reformed. But the military representatives painted the starkest picture of all: Admiral Lorenzo, a veteran of dozens of peacekeeping missions, stood before the assembly with charts and projections that made everyone's worst fears seem optimistic, based on historical patterns of aggressive species. If we wait for them to develop interstellar travel, it will be too late, he said, his normally calm voice carrying an edge of desperate urgency. Every day we delay gives them more time to build weapons, increase their numbers, and perfect their destructive capabilities. The vote, when it finally came, was closer than anyone expected, but fear won over hope. The Council authorized the largest military operation in galactic history. Ships from every member world would be gathered into a single massive fleet. The mission was clear: travel to this dangerous species' home system and eliminate the threat before it could spread. Admiral Rodriguez was chosen to lead the operation, despite sharing a name with the scientist who had made the discovery. His military record was flawless. His experience in dealing with hostile situations was unmatched. As the session ended and delegates began making arrangements for the largest armada ever assembled, none of them realized they were about to make the biggest mistake in galactic history. Were preparing for war against a species whose greatest strength would turn out to be something they had never considered: the capacity to choose love over fear, even when fear seemed like the only logical response. Admiral Carlos Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching 300 warships drop out of hyperspace in perfect formation. The sight should have filled him with pride, but instead, a knot of worry twisted in his stomach. In 40 years of military service, he had never led a mission quite like this one. The armada stretched for thousands of kilometers in every direction. Ships from the crystal cities of Rigel gleamed like floating diamonds. The bioorganic vessels from Proxima pulsed with living light. Even the normally peaceful agricultural worlds had sent their defense fleets. Understanding that this threat was too serious to ignore, "Admiral, we're detecting the target system," reported Lieutenant Vera from the navigation station. Her blue skin was pale with nervousness, the first time Carlos had ever seen the normally confident officer show any sign of fear. Through the massive viewing screen, they could see a small yellow star with several planets orbiting around it. According to the probe data, the third planet from the star was where the dangerous species lived. From this distance, it looked peaceful enough, just a blue and green marble floating in the darkness of space. All ships maintain defensive positions, Carlos ordered through the fleet communication system. Weapons powered, but not targeted. We approach with caution. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who had insisted on joining the expedition despite the obvious dangers, was hunched over her scientific equipment in the corner of the bridge. She had spent the entire journey analyzing and reanalyzing her data, looking for any detail that might help them understand what they were about to face. "Admiral," she called out, her voice tight with concentration, "I'm detecting some unusual energy signatures from the planet. It's not what we expected." Carlos walked over to Elena's station, studying the readings that scrolled across her screens. Instead of the aggressive military postures they had prepared for, the sensors were picking up something completely different. "These energy patterns," Elena said, pointing to the display, "they're not weapon signatures. They look more like communication attempts." Before Carlos could respond, the fleet's communication officer practically jumped out of his seat. "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from the planet. Lots of them. They're coming from all over the surface." "Put them through the translation computers," Carlos ordered, though he wondered what kind of threats or demands these dangerous beings would make. What came through the speakers was not at all what anyone expected. The first transmission was a simple mathematical sequence, starting with basic numbers and building up to complex equations. It was the universal language that peaceful species used to show their intelligence to newcomers. But that didn't make sense. Why would such an aggressive species try to communicate peacefully? The second transmission was even more confusing. It was music. Soft melodic sounds that seemed designed to be soothing and welcoming. The bridge crew looked at each other in bewilderment. What kind of dangerous warriors sent music as their first contact? Then came the images. The planet's inhabitants were transmitting pictures of their world, their cities, and themselves. Carlos found himself staring at beings that looked remarkably similar to his own species, though without the blue skin and gills that his people had developed for their ocean world. But the most shocking transmissions were the greetings. Elena's translation computers worked frantically to decode hundreds of different languages, all saying essentially the same thing: "Welcome to our solar system. We come in peace. Please be our friends." "This doesn't make any sense," muttered General Vex, whose species had contributed 50 ships to the armada. "According to our intelligence, these beings should be mobilizing for battle. Instead, they're throwing us a welcome party?" Dr. Elena studied the incoming data with growing confusion. Every transmission seemed designed to show peaceful intentions. The humans, as they called themselves, were broadcasting everything from children's lullabies to scientific theories, from artistic masterpieces to what appeared to be recipes for food. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving a transmission on the official first contact frequency. It's coming from what appears to be their planetary government." Carlos nodded grimly. "Put it through." A voice came through the speakers, speaking in what the computers identified as the planet's most common language. The translation was slightly delayed, but the message was clear: "To our visitors from the stars, we extend our warmest welcome to Earth and our solar system. We have dreamed of this day for generations. We know we must seem primitive compared to your advanced civilizations, but we hope you will accept our friendship and teach us to be better neighbors in this vast galaxy we share." The bridge fell completely silent. Carlos looked around at his crew, seeing his own confusion reflected in their faces. This was supposed to be the most dangerous species in the galaxy, but they were acting like excited children who had just met their heroes. Alina was frantically checking her equipment. Admiral, I'm reading massive energy buildups across the planet's surface, but they're not weapon signatures. They appear to be ... celebrations. The view screen zoomed in on the planet's night side, where thousands of lights were visible across the continents. But these weren't the harsh glares of military installations preparing for battle. They were soft, colorful displays that seemed designed purely for beauty and joy. "Sir," reported the sensor operator, "I'm detecting what appears to be global communication networks lighting up with activity. The whole planet seems to be talking about our arrival." Carlos felt like his understanding of the universe had just been turned upside down. Everything the Council had told him about this species suggested they should be preparing weapons and mobilizing armies. Instead, they seemed to be preparing the largest welcome celebration in their planet's history. "Lieutenant." Vera approached him with a confused expression. "Admiral, we have a problem. Our ships are detecting no military response whatsoever from the planet. No weapons being powered up, no defensive shields being raised, no fleets being launched. It's like they're completely defenseless. Or completely confident that we're not a threat," Alina added quietly. More transmissions kept pouring in. Scientists from around the planet were sharing their research, asking questions about life on other worlds, and offering to exchange knowledge. Artists were broadcasting their greatest works, hoping to share their culture with alien visitors. Children were sending drawings and simple messages, saying hello in dozens of languages. Carlos realized he was facing a decision that could change galactic history. The Council had sent him here to eliminate a threat, but the supposed enemy was acting more like long-lost relatives celebrating a family reunion. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "the humans are requesting permission to send a small, unarmed shuttle to our flagship. They say their leaders want to meet with us personally to discuss peaceful relations." Carlos stared out at the blue planet below, watching as more celebration lights appeared across its surface. Somewhere down there, billions of beings were staying up all night, hoping to catch a glimpse of the aliens who had come to visit their world. They had no idea that those same aliens had come to destroy them. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Carlos Rodriguez began to wonder if the intelligence reports had been completely wrong. These didn't seem like the galaxy's most dangerous predators. They seemed like its most enthusiastic hosts. The question was, what should he do about it? Dr. Alina Rodriguez had never felt so wrong about anything in her entire life. She stood in the middle of what humans called Central Park, surrounded by tall trees and green grass that reminded her of her home planet, but everything else about. This moment was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Children were running around her, laughing and pointing at her blue skin with the kind of innocent curiosity that existed in young beings across the galaxy. Their parents watched with excited smiles, taking pictures and asking polite questions. Through translation devices that the humans had quickly provided, 3 days had passed since. The alien fleet had arrived in Earth's solar system, 3 days since Admiral Carlos had made the controversial decision to accept humanity's invitation for peaceful talks, instead of following his original orders to attack. And in those 3 days, everything Alina thought she knew about the galaxy's most dangerous species had been turned completely upside down. Dr. Rodriguez called Dr. Patricia Chen, one of Earth's leading scientists, who had been assigned as Alina's guide. "The children at the nearby school are asking if you'd like to visit their classrooms. They've prepared presentations about their planet to share with you." Alina looked at Patricia with amazement. Here was a member of the species that was supposed to be the galaxy's greatest threat, and she was offering to let alien visitors into rooms full of their most vulnerable young ones. What kind of aggressive, dangerous beings would expose their children to unknown aliens? "I would be honored," Alina replied, still struggling to understand what was happening as they walked through the human city. Alina couldn't help but notice how wrong her initial data interpretation had been. Yes, there were millions of humans living in this one location, but they weren't packed together like the aggressive hive species she had imagined. Instead, they had created spaces for art, for nature, for community gathering. Children played in parks, while adults worked in buildings that seemed designed as much for beauty as for function. Dr. Chen noticed Elena's confused expression Is something wrong? You've seemed puzzled ever since you arrived? Elena decided to. Be honest, Dr. Chen. Before we came here, our probe data suggested that your species was extremely dangerous. We believed you were a threat to all life in the galaxy. Patricia stopped walking and stared at her alien guest with genuine shock. A threat? Us? But we've spent the last several decades trying to become less dangerous, not more. We're working hard to fix the damage we've done to our planet and to learn how to live peacefully with each other. That afternoon, Elena attended a presentation at the United Nations, where human leaders from around the world had gathered to meet with the alien delegation. What she heard there completely shattered her understanding of the probe data. The rapid population growth that had terrified the Galactic Council. The humans explained that their numbers had actually started to level off as their society became more advanced. That they had learned that having fewer children meant they could take better care of each one, put less strain on their planet's resources. We went through a period of very fast growth, explained Dr. James Park, a human population expert. But we've realized that bigger isn't always better. We're now focusing on education, healthcare, and making sure everyone has what they need rather than just having as many people as possible. The advanced weapons technology that had seemed so threatening? Elena learned that humans had developed these tools primarily out of fear of each other, not to conquer other worlds. And now that they knew they weren't alone in the universe, many were suggesting that those weapons should be dismantled entirely. We built these things because we were scared and isolated, admitted General Rosa Martinez during a briefing about Earth's military capabilities. But knowing that there are peaceful civilizations out there changes everything. Why would we need weapons when we could have friends instead? But the biggest revelation came when Elena visited what humans called environmental restoration sites. The probe data had shown massive environmental destruction, leading the aliens to believe that humans cared nothing about preserving life. The reality was exactly the opposite. Elena stood in a forest that had been completely destroyed 50 years earlier, but was now thriving again, thanks to human efforts to replant and restore it. She watched as volunteers worked to clean pollution from rivers and oceans. She saw massive machines that pulled harmful gases from the atmosphere and converted them into useful materials. We made a lot of mistakes when we were younger as a species, explained Dr. Rachel Foster, an environmental scientist who had dedicated her life to healing Earth's damaged ecosystems, but we've learned from those mistakes. To stop the damage anymore, we're actively working to heal our world and make it better than it was before. Elena realized that what the probe had interpreted as destruction was actually the growing pains of a young species learning to live responsibly. The humans weren't destroying their environment out of carelessness or aggression. They had been doing it out of ignorance, and they were now working incredibly hard to fix their mistakes. The most shocking discovery came during a cultural exchange event that evening. Elena sat in a large auditorium filled with humans who had come to share their art, music, and stories with the alien visitors. What she witnessed there changed her understanding of what it meant to be human. A young musician played a song about hope and dreams of exploring the stars. An elderly poet read verses about the beauty of different cultures learning from each other. A group of dancers performed a piece that told the story of humanity's journey from a divided world to a united species ready to join the galactic community. But it was the children's choir that finally brought tears to Elena's eyes. 50 young humans sang a song they had written themselves, with lyrics in dozens of different human languages, all expressing the same simple message: we want to be friends with everyone in the universe. As Elena listened to those innocent voices singing about friendship and cooperation, she realized the most important truth of all. The humans weren't dangerous because they were aggressive or destructive. They were powerful because they had an incredible capacity for growth, change, and hope. After the performance, a little girl named Maria approached Elena with a drawing she had made. It showed blue-skinned aliens and human children playing together under a bright yellow sun, with the words, "Best friends forever," written in crayon at the bottom. "This is for you," Maria said with a shy smile. "Thank you for coming to visit us." Elena knelt down to accept the gift, understanding finally that the galaxy's most frightening species wasn't frightening at all. They were just young, enthusiastic, and eager to learn Their rapid growth wasn't a sign of aggression, but of incredible adaptability. Their advanced technology wasn't meant for conquest, but for exploration and problem-solving. Their environmental challenges weren't proof of carelessness, but evidence of a species learning to take responsibility for their actions. As she held that simple drawing in her hands, Lena realized that the Galactic Council hadn't just been wrong about humans being dangerous. They had been wrong about what made a species truly valuable. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their unlimited capacity to hope for a better future in there. Determination to make that hope a reality. The galaxy's most frightening species had turned out to be its most inspiring one. And Alina knew that when she returned to the council. With her real report, everything in the universe was about to change for the better. 1 year later, Dr. Alina Rodriguez stood in front of the same Galactic Council chamber where she had once declared humanity the greatest threat in the universe. But this time, she wasn't there to warn about danger. She was there to share the most incredible story of transformation the galaxy had ever witnessed. The great amphitheater was packed beyond capacity. Representatives from every known civilization had come to hear her final report on the species that had changed everything they thought they knew about intelligence, cooperation, and hope. Honor delegates, Alina began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber through translation devices that now included 3 new human languages. 1 year ago, I stood here and told you that we had discovered the galaxy's most frightening species. Today, I'm here to tell you that I was right about the frightening part, but completely wrong about what made them scary. A ripple of curious sounds moved through the assembled aliens. Prime Minister Yolanda, who had authorized the military expedition, leaned forward with interest. Admiral Carlos, who had made the brave decision to choose communication over conflict, sat in the front row with a proud smile on his weathered face. What makes humans truly frightening, Alina continued, is not their capacity for destruction, but their unlimited ability to grow, change, and inspire others to become better than they ever thought possible. The holographic display came to life. But instead of showing weapon signatures and environmental destruction, it displayed images of remarkable transformation. Human cities that had been polluted wastelands were now thriving centers of clean technology. Forests that had been destroyed were growing back stronger than ever. Most amazingly, the humans had managed to reduce their carbon emissions by 60% in just 1 year. Motivated by their desire to present a clean, healthy world to their new galactic neighbors, Ambassador Crix, whose blue skin had flickered with anxiety during the first meeting, now glowed with the warm colors of contentment. Dr. Rodriguez, these changes seem almost impossible. How did they accomplish so much so quickly? Alina smiled, remembering her conversations with human leaders about this very question. The answer is simple but profound. When humans learned, they weren't alone in the universe. Everything changed for them. They suddenly had something bigger than themselves to strive for. They wanted to prove they were worthy of joining the galactic community. The chamber fell silent as Alina shared story after story of human innovation and generosity. When the ocean-dwelling Proximans had mentioned their struggle with a coral disease that was destroying their underwater cities, human marine biologists had worked day and night to develop a cure. When the agricultural worlds reported crop failures due to changing weather patterns, human farmers had shared drought-resistant seeds and water conservation techniques that saved millions from starvation. But their greatest gift, Alina said, isn't their technology or their solutions, it's their perspective. She activated a new hologram showing the Human Cultural Exchange Center that had been built in orbit around Earth. Inside, beings from dozens of different worlds were learning, creating, and collaborating in ways that had never happened before. Humans see problems differently than we do, Alina explained. Where we see impossible challenges, they see exciting puzzles to solve. Where we see differences between species as barriers, they see them as opportunities to learn new things. They've taught us that the word impossible is just another way of saying we haven't figured it out yet. The Arcturian representative, whose tentacles had writhed with distress a year ago, now moved them in graceful patterns of joy. Dr. Rodriguez, My people have lived for thousands of years. But in just 1 year of working with humans, we've learned more about art, music, and creative expression than in our entire previous history. General Vera, the military advisor who had calculated humanity's potential for destruction, stood up to address the chamber. I must admit that my analysis was completely wrong. Yes, humans are capable of incredible destruction, but they're even more capable of incredible creation. They've shown us that strength isn't about how much damage you can cause, but about how much good you can do. Alina nodded and continued with her report. The humans have established what they call the Galactic Friendship Initiative. Every major human university now offers courses in alien cultures, languages, and sciences. Their children learn about other species alongside their own history. They've created art galleries, music festivals, and sports competitions that include participants from every member world. The most touching part of Elena's presentation came when she showed videos from Earth's schools. Human children who had never seen an alien before their first contact were now pen pals with young beings from across the galaxy. They exchanged drawings, shared stories about their different worlds, and asked the kind of innocent questions that led to breakthrough discoveries. One 8-year-old human child asked our crystal friends from Rigel why their bodies made music when they moved. Elena shared with a laugh. That simple question led to the development of new healing technologies that use harmonic frequencies to repair damaged tissue. Sometimes the most profound scientific advances come from the most basic curiosity. But Elena's most important revelation was still to come. Fellow delegates, I need to tell you something that might change how we think about intelligence itself. Humans aren't just good at solving problems and making friends. They're good at something we never considered valuable. Before they're good at making mistakes and learning from them? The chamber buzzed with confused sounds as species tried to understand this concept. Every other civilization in our galaxy developed slowly and carefully, Alina explained. We learned the right way to do things from the beginning and stuck with those methods for thousands of years. Humans are different. They try things, fail spectacularly, then try again with new approaches. They've failed more times in their short history than most species fail in their entire existence. But each failure taught them something new. That's why they were able to change their environmental destruction patterns so quickly. They weren't emotionally attached to old ways of doing things because they were used to constantly finding better methods. What we saw as dangerous recklessness was actually their greatest strength. The courage to admit when something isn't working, and the creativity to find better solutions. As Elena's presentation drew to a close, she shared the most remarkable statistic of all.
Oh yeah.
In just 1 year, the number of interspecies collaborative projects has increased by 300%.
Oh yeah.
The rate of scientific discovery has doubled. Art and cultural exchange programs have created new forms of expression that none of us had imagined before. And perhaps most importantly, the number of conflicts between member worlds has dropped to 0. Ambassador Chen, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council, stood up to address the assembly. Her words were simple, but powerful. We want to thank you all for giving us a chance. We're young and make a lot of mistakes. But we promise to keep learning, keep growing, and keep working to earn our place in this amazing galactic family. As Alina concluded her report, she looked out at an audience that had been transformed just as much as humanity had. The fear and suspicion that had brought them together a year ago had been replaced by excitement and hope for the future. Fellow beings, Alina said with a smile, we spent so long looking for the galaxy's most frightening species that we forgot to look for its most necessary one. Humans have reminded us that the universe isn't about avoiding danger. It's about embracing the incredible possibilities that come when different forms of life choose to work together. The standing ovation that followed lasted for 20 minutes and was performed in 47 different ways, creating the most beautiful symphony of appreciation the galaxy had ever heard.